Once Shakespeare had his grounding in grammar and syntax in the lower forms of the grammar school at Stratford-upon-Avon, he would have moved to the upper classes and started to read original Latin literature. To begin with, the boys would look at anthologies of select passages, highlights and greatest hits from the Roman poets and prose writers. But in time, they would go on and read original texts. So it was that Shakespeare's first encounter with serious literature was not Chaucer, say, or any of the older English poets, but rather the Roman poets, Virgil and Ovid and Horace. By the same account, his first encounter with drama was not the old English mystery plays or the morality plays of the court of the early 16th century. It was Roman drama. It was the tragedies of Seneca, the comedies of Terence and Plautus. Shakespeare's training in literature was a classical one. And throughout his career, he remained influenced by those books that he read at school. Of all the books, the one that he seems to have enjoyed most, and that he certainly returned to most often, was the Metamorphoses of the Roman poet Ovid. Shakespeare's first work to go into print was a poem called Venus and Adonis, which was his own adaptation and expansion of a story in Ovid's Metamorphoses. Shakespeare's first play to go into print was Titus Andronicus, a Roman subject but an invented story of which the structure was based very clearly on the story of the rape of Philomel in Ovid's Metamorphoses. Indeed, in that play, a copy of Ovid's Metamorphoses is actually brought onto stage, used as a plot in the development of the action. Throughout Shakespeare's career, he's constantly referring to stories in Ovid. The Metamorphoses was the Roman world's great collection of the myths, the stories of the gods and heroes, which helped to shape the imagination of the ancient world. Whether it was the story of the creation of the world, or of the Trojan War, or of the strange transformations undergone by nymphs pursued by gods, or young men who displeased the gods. All these stories were gathered together in Ovid. He was a supremely witty poet and a very, very imaginative one, irreverent, constantly weaving one story upon another. The young Shakespeare absolutely loved it, and you can see the influence throughout his works. And it's important to remember that anybody in his audience who had been to grammar school would instantly have recognised the references to Ovid's story and the meaning of them. Let's have a look at an example of what I mean by this in The Merry Wives of Windsor. Sir John Falstaff is in love with both Mistress Page and Mistress Ford. Well, I say in love, it may be more in lust. He knows what he wants to do with them. The character called Pistol warns Master Ford, Mistress Ford's husband, about Falstaff. "Sir John affects thy wife," he says. "Why, sir, my wife is not young," says Ford. "Why would he fall in love with my wife? Why would he want her when she's not young?" Pistol replies, "He woos both high and low, both rich and poor, both young and old, one with another, Ford. He loves the gallimaufry, Ford, perpend." In other words, Falstaff loves every woman. "Love my wife," says Ford. And then listen to Pistol's reply. "With liver burning hot, prevent, or go thou like Sir Actaeon, he with ringwood at thy heels." "Oh, odious is the name." "What name, sir?" says Ford. "The horn, I say, farewell. Take heed, have open eye, for thieves do foot by night. Take heed ere summer comes, or cuckoo birds do sing." There's a couple of words or phrases there that Shakespeare's audience would immediately have twigged on. One is the idea of the horns, and the other the cuckoo bird, because the colloquial terms for a man having his wife, for a man being a victim of his wife's infidelity was a cuckold or wearing the horns. So what Pistol is doing here is warning Ford that he could very soon be a cuckold. He could be wearing the horns. He could be like Sir Actaeon with Ringwood at his heels. Who was Actaeon? Well, Actaeon was a character in Ovid, and we can see here the story of Actaeon in the third book of the Metamorphoses in an English translation from Shakespeare's time. Actaeon was out hunting and he stumbled upon the goddess Diana, Diana, the goddess of chastity and purity. She was bathing naked with her nymphs, and Actaeon rather liked what he saw. Diana was angry, so using the metamorphic power of the gods, she transformed Actaeon into a stag, at which point he was hunted down by his own hounds. And Ovid has a lovely list of the names of all Actaeon's dogs, just for sort of passage the young schoolboy Shakespeare would have loved. One of those dogs is Ringwood. Readers of Ovid in Shakespeare's time tended to see the stories as symbols or allegories of human behaviour. So the story of Actaeon denotes the idea that we will be hunted down by the dogs of our own desire. He shows lust, he shows desire, and it comes back to haunt him, and he's hunted down. So just that reference to Actaeon and Ringwood summons up Ovid and that particular story for Shakespeare's audience. But by a lovely twist, in the final act of the play, it's not Master Ford, but Sir John Falstaff who becomes Actaeon. There is an elaborate plot in which he disguises himself as a figure called Herne the Hunter, and he intends to meet with the ladies and have a dalliance with them in the forest. So it is that Falstaff appears wearing horns, and Falstaff thus begins to look like Actaeon, and he is duly hunted down. It's a comedy, so it's not in the serious way of Actaeon. He's not torn to pieces by dogs, but he's pinched and punched by children dressed as fairies. What's interesting, though, for our purposes, is that when Falstaff first comes on wearing the horns of Actaeon, he refers to a whole range of references in Ovid, of stories of transformations brought about by the gods, led by lust, by sexual desire. So this is Falstaff as Actaeon. The Windsor bell hath struck, the minute draws on. Now the hot-blooded gods assist me. Remember, Jove, thou wast a bull for thy Europa, love set on thy horns. O powerful love, that in some respects makes a beast a man, in some other a man a beast. You were also, Jupiter, a swan for the love of Leda. O omnipotent love, how near the god drew to the complexion of a goose, a fault done first in the form of a beast. O Jove, a beastly fault, and then another fault in the semblance of a fowl. When gods have hot backs, what shall poor men do? I am here a Windsor stag, and the fattest, I think, in the forest. Jove, the god, converted himself to a bull when he pursued the nymph Europa, to a swan when he was in love with Leda. Ovidian metamorphosis, making a beast a man or a man a beast. Falstaff refers to Ovid, and the stage image almost acts out a metamorphosis before our very eyes. Sir John Falstaff, the Windsor stag, Herne the Hunter, but also Actaeon from Ovid's Metamorphoses.